Elon Musk just said on Twitter, "True, it was my worst decision ever," referring to not starting Tesla with just JB Straubel. In the beginning, Elon also worked with Martin Eberhard, but he was horrible. Here's one reason why Elon Musk thinks that.
The core product design for the car itself was, I think, compelling, but the business decisions around how to make it which Eberhard made, were terrible. Among the many decisions that were insane were outsourcing battery production to a barbecue factory in Thailand in 2007, where Martin just flat out lied to me about the cost and readiness of the car. I actually gave him an opportunity. I said, Martin, what is the cost of goods of the car? Like, how much is it? Like, what are we tracking to? And is it above the price that we are charging? And I actually knew the answer because an investor had joined who had audited the costs, and that investor told me, like, hey man, the numbers he's adding up for the best case long-term cost of the Roadster is $180,000. I think we were like selling it for $85,000. Rivian has that problem right now. So, like, okay, he's flat out lying to me. Because I asked, did you tell Martin this? And he said, yes, I told Martin this. And that when he did boldface lied to me, I was like, that's it. He can't be CEO anymore. So we had a board meeting and we fired him unanimously, including the people that he had appointed to the board.
You know that then even the board members that you personally chose and appointed that would then inherently like you and be grateful for you appointing them to the board end up actually firing you, voting in favor of firing you? You seriously screwed up, and yet they are trying to portray this narrative that somehow it is all Elon's wrongdoing. That is all wrong. Elon Musk obviously thinks very highly of JB Straubel, so let's take a look at the early days of Tesla explained by JB Straubel.
This was sort of the beginning of the whole Tesla journey. I met Elon in about 2003, and it was shortly after he was much less famous than he is today. It was shortly after he had sold PayPal. He had just started this crazy rocket company, and it was sort of the first generation of entrepreneurs starting rocket companies, so it seemed even more outlandish maybe than it does today when it's succeeding quite well. He was the first person that really immediately understood and resonated with what could happen and the potential for putting lithium-ion batteries in EVs. And it was only a few months after this, in 2004, that he funded the Series A round for what became Tesla. I think it was about $8 million. That was the entire A round for the company, which is sort of crazy in hindsight, but that's what it was, and it felt like a vast amount of money. And we rallied around this concept, building what became the Tesla Roadster. It was really the first lithium-ion powered commercial EV, which again seems crazy. This was not that long ago. This was only 2004, less than 20 years ago, and no one had ever done this before. It was literally the first. There were tons of skeptics. It was brutally hard, actually, even though we could take the data and we could explain and show, hey, here's why it can go 250 miles, here's the performance, etc. People didn't believe it.
Look at the Roadster design and tell me if you see something crazy. I mean, something crazy stupid. It's the battery. The battery is not under the car. It's literally put right here. But despite this crazy inefficiency, the car still worked. Do you think current Teslas still have some weird inefficiencies like that, where 20 years from now we will look back and say, yeah, that was really silly? I mean, guys, you were not doing gigacastings. Why did you not use gigacastings? That was obvious. I mean, it took so long for all of you to figure it out. Tesla is, of course, using gigacastings now, but most competitors are not.
There were fierce critics that said, these batteries could never work. It was impossibly unsafe. They sort of threatened that we were fraudulent and all these, crazy accusations, which was bizarre. I mean, I was an engineer and this was data and we were taking a model and designing a product, but it's a very emotional thing.
It almost feels like he is talking about today. The Cybertruck is never going to come. The next generation vehicle is never going to come. Tesla is still a fraudulent company, Tesla shorts say. The CFO, they say, is making up the numbers. There's no way Tesla can still be this profitable. That's just one of those things you have to deal with if you are a Tesla stock investor.
But this was really the first one that proved that lithium ion could work in a car. And it proved that we were sort of in a different regime of, starting to not have it be a technological problem. It was more of a price issue. It was a vehicle design issue. But fundamentally now there was enough range. There was enough energy to do something useful. So we created a roadmap of a whole bunch of other vehicles, a so-called master plan that migrated from the Roadster to what became then the Model S and the Model X and then the Model 3 and the Model Y. And one vehicle at a time, one sort of model at a time, clawed the way all the way from being this tiny team, this ragtag bunch of people in Silicon Valley, toward building one of the largest car companies in the world.
Great job, JB. Without you, Tesla would not be where it is today.
At Tesla, I had also kind of the very lucky job. I loved my role there. I got to be very entrepreneurial, and it was what I enjoyed doing the most. I sort of was a little bit restless, and I would usually jump to kind of pushing the boundary and trying to innovate some adjacent technology or business to what we were doing. So I got to do that multiple times and really enjoyed that. So one of the things I was particularly excited and proud about was pushing and innovating some of our charging networks back then. Again, it seems crazy today when you're out driving EVs around and using charging networks and supercharging, but none of that existed. Even just as little as maybe 10 to 12 years ago, none of that existed.
JB loves being an entrepreneur, and that is one reason why I think Elon likely chose him to be the successor of Tesla, as long as he accepted, of course. And that is why I love having him on the Tesla board. He's not elected yet, but I'm sure he will be.
These major, different initiatives sort of reinforced battery demand. When we could have charging, we'd sell more vehicles. When stationary storage grew, it needed more batteries. Everything needed more batteries. And when we launched the Model 3 vehicle, this was really the first mass market electric vehicle. This was about 300,000 vehicles a year when we first started it, and heading toward 500,000. It was more batteries than the entire world built at the time, more lithium-ion batteries. So there was this kind of dramatic idea to invent a whole new factory concept, a Gigafactory, that literally was bigger than the entire world output of lithium-ion batteries in one single factory.
Even though I was not an investor in Tesla stock yet at that time, I remember everyone talking about it and saying, this cannot be done, this is just too big, you are out of your mind, you might as well just give up, this is never going to work. And guess what? It did work out.
Seemed crazy, but it was simple math. If 300,000 people bought this car, somebody needed that factory. So we built it, we designed this. The first one was in northern Nevada, and it was very successful. Over a lot of years of working hard to get it to ramp, but it drove down the cost of batteries dramatically through economies of scale. Through integration, through vertical integration of cell to electrode to cell to module to pack. Also automation, a lot more software, and a lot more integration, focusing on the factory and how we built it. Some of those systems that Amory highlighted to basically save energy and save operating cost. So this was very successful.
That's quite an understatement. It was widely successful. Without that factory, the Model 3 would not have existed. And without the Model 3, would we really be transitioning to EVs right now? Definitely not at this pace.
And the interesting thing that the factory did was it changed the whole paradigm of how the battery cost structure worked. Previously, it was defined by the cost to assemble the battery. After the Gigafactory ramped, the raw materials, the components, determined the battery cost. And suddenly, things like all the nickel, lithium, cobalt, manganese, copper, those now were by far the majority of the cell cost. And all the gray stuff, or the bluish gray stuff, is the cost to assemble it. That's the whole Gigafactory cost. So we kind of flipped this paradigm, and suddenly the factory became the minority, and all the other stuff became the majority.
And long term, this is where recycling will really come in very handy. And this is what JB Straubel is working on right now with Redwood Materials, the company that he started and left Tesla. There may come a day when Tesla actually ends up buying Redwood Materials, and that would happen, I think, if JB Straubel was to be chosen to become the CEO of Tesla. And this is the Tesla stock buying opportunity explained by Elon Musk. My name is Matt Posius. Like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.